Hello, UW. It's so awesome to be back on the stomping grounds that I spent so many amazing years at. So my name is Dave Wilkin, and I am an entrepreneur by mistake. And through a number of these mistakes, I got to see this interesting perspective of how an unconventional approach is really the way that us as millennials can unlock opportunity. And it was with these mistakes that I got my first job, these mistakes that I was able to land in some position that I can literally think about every single day. And it was these mistakes that all of a sudden I became an entrepreneur, running a company that's helping young people around the world. And why I'm here today is to talk to you because as millennials, we are the most valuable yet unknown natural resource. And it's our responsibility to be able to take those first steps into the real world and show the world what we as millennials are capable of. And my mistakes all started when I was in high school. I grew up in a small town. And when I was in grade 12, like so many other grade 12 students, you're faced with this big question, which is what you're going to do with your life. And being from a small town, I really had two paths. On one hand, I could go into the trades. And on the other hand, I could go off to become a doctor, dentist, or lawyer and go and pursue a university education. And the one thing I did know at that time was that I was not a handy guy, so I knew that I had to go off to school. Unfortunately enough for me, throughout high school, I was very involved, like many young people, in my community, in conferences, getting involved outside of the classroom. And because of that, I was able to get a scholarship to come to the University of Waterloo. And when I came onto campus, let me tell you, going from a small town to Waterloo was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I came onto campus, like many young people, with huge ideas and dreams of what you could do when you went to university. All of the jobs, the opportunity, all of a sudden life was going to begin in a completely new lens. And when it was time to get that first job, I rolled into my advisor's office and I sat down. And I just had so much excitement to figure out what types of roles I could get and the jobs I could get in my first summer now that I was a university student. And when I sat down across the table with this excitement, it wasn't long until my bubble was popped. And when she shared with me, she said, Dave, unfortunately, you're a first-year student. And when you're a first-year student and you put that on a resume, what happens is your resume gets tossed into the garbage because you're a first-year student. So what's actually going to happen, this is when reality set in, is that you're going to try to get an admin job or just some kind of job to pay the bills if you're lucky. And as you go through the years and you get into your senior years of school, hopefully you'll get that job that you kind of like and then hold on to that job with everything that you got because that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And all of a sudden, these millennial dreams that we all have as one of the most aspirational generations in history, I walked out of that office completely defeated. And I thought, why is the fact that I'm a first-year student holding me back from being able to go get this opportunity that I really wanted? And so I thought, there's 4 years, and these 4 years of nonprofits and community work and building teams and solving really important challenges got me a full scholarship to go to university, but it's not going to get me a job? Something was really wrong here. And so I decided that a simple solution was just to take the year of study off of my resume, focus on those 4 years of skills, and start applying to jobs. And it kind of worked. All of a sudden I got calls. Those calls turned into interviews, and those interviews turned into jobs. And one of those jobs was actually a dream job where I was able to be the spokesperson for youth for the federal government. And what that entailed is that I got to talk about all of us young people, all these crazy millennials that exist around the world, and talk to government and reporters and industry about what we believed in and all the potential that we had. And guess what? We weren't a difficult generation. We just needed a better way to get opportunity because I wouldn't be here if I would have had the year of study on my resume. And as I was in those conversations, I had this really interesting fly-in-the-wall perspective on what the real world really wanted, and it was quite exciting. I heard from all of these CEOs and leaders and government officials that they actually wanted to talk to us as much as we wanted to talk to them. And I had no idea as an 18-year-old first-year university student. And what they said was that the model was just broken and they couldn't find interesting people to have those conversations with. And so after that summer and all of those different experiences, I knew that a resume was definitely not going to get my next job. And so what I did is I built a portfolio. And in that portfolio, I showcased this entire theory on how young people could unlock opportunity through completely unconventional ways. And that portfolio, instead of sending it out through the mail, I decided just to set up coffee conversations. And so email after email, door knock after door knock, call after call, I was getting these coffee conversations with industries from all all these different industries with a variety of leaders, and just went for coffees. And one of the most interesting coffees I had was with a serial entrepreneur, and that first coffee turned into a second. And I knew that when I was turning into a second, I was hot on the tails of a great job. And when I showed up into that second coffee chat, dressed up in my suit that didn't fit right, I sat down across the table for that coffee conversation and threw my portfolio on the desk to walk through, and she stopped me and she said, "I've only got 10 minutes to talk to you this time, and I'm sorry, I can't hire you." And I looked across and I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Actually, I can't hire you. It's not doing justice. You need to go and start a company." And I looked at her across the table with such confusion for what does that even mean to go and start a company as a 19-year-old? And she said, "You have solved this interesting way for young people to unlock opportunities by being completely unconventional. We knew they had great skills, but how they get those skills into the real world just isn't working. So just go and start a company. And I'm not going to talk to you again until you start a company." A lot of pressure. And I had 5 minutes left of that conversation, so I had about one question. The best question I could think of at the time was, what was the 3 things I needed to do if I actually decided to go and start a company? And she said 3 things. First is create a company name. Second is create business cards and do that. And the third is just go start talking to people. Go and talk to people about young people and what we were capable of, and hopefully somebody will start paying you to do it. And so I walked out of that room and I knew she had done something right, so I might as well take her advice. So I emailed all of these recruiters where I had job offers that I was somewhat happy with. And I said, "Sorry, thanks for the offer, but I'm actually going to go start a company." And in the replies, you could hear the chuckling. You could hear the chuckling of, "Good luck. Let us know when you need a job next." And I thought I might as well give it a kick at the can and go see if we can actually go change how young people connected with the real world. And now we're 4 years from that point. And we've helped hundreds of thousands of young people across the country connect with opportunity in completely different ways. And I could not be more excited with the team that we have to look forward and know that we're going to help millions of more young people completely change how we get opportunity. But it's all of our responsibilities to change a few of the conventional ways to go and approach how we get opportunity in an unconventional way. And I'm going to share the 3 things that we have to change to be able to do that. The first is that we've got to say goodbye to that resume. The second is that mentorship, which we all know is important, mentorship is going to be the lifeblood of how our generation takes on the reins and leads forward. We've got to flip mentorship on its head and create an mentorship approach. And the third part is it's something that we're stuck with as millennials is this ego. And we've got to kill our egos and be able to go out there and go and pursue opportunity without that darn ego. But before I talk about those 3 things, let's just look at the millennial audience as a natural resource. In Canada alone, we have 7 million millennials across the country. In the next few years, as a generation around the world, we will be the biggest in history. We are a massive powerhouse of people. Not only that, but in not too many years, we're going to be 75% of the workplace. Of course, as people retire, we're going to represent a big thing, but an important thing to note about this stat is that currently, as of today, 80% of jobs and opportunities that are out there are not posted publicly. There's no way to find it. It's who you know. And in the next 20 years, 80% of the jobs that will exist do not exist today. Just think about that. All of those disruptive things that us millennials are bringing up right now, 80% of the jobs that will exist in 20 years don't exist right now. Things are changing and we've got to approach it in an unconventional way. And although millennials are natural problem solvers, we like to get involved in the workplace and we're these disruptors, 2 of 3 of us feel that management's getting in the way. And what's interesting about this side is you go talk to the top % of management around the world, they want to hear our ideas, they want to work with us, but it's our responsibility to figure out better ways to go and help them embrace these ideas and make sure it's impacting their business. And be able to get through that layer between the top 10% and the bottom 10%, the reality is we're the bottom 10%, and get those ideas to help these business leaders shape what's next. And as many millennials, we're often stereotyped with these big aspirations of having jobs that engage and motivate us. We need to keep fighting for that. It is possible. It is possible to go and start a career that motivates us, that we believe in, that we wake up, and there's no longer a need for work-life balance because what we do every day is something we believe in. But if we want to get to that point, we have to approach it in an unconventional way. And out of all generations in history, we are the most educated. Never in the history could you access the amount of information that we can access on our smartphones right now as you're in this audience? And that's us. But on the other side of the table, you have all these CEOs and industry leaders and these people that we think are kind of untouchable. And these untouchable leaders, these are the types of things that they're saying. They know that we're shaping the future, and they want our help. They want to listen to us, but we've got to find a better way to get our ideas and get those conversations started. And I almost look at it as this beautiful love story that just hasn't happened yet, where you have all of these industry leaders who want to talk to the next generation, and you have the next generation that so desperately needs opportunity. In fact, the number one thing that's going to face the millennial generation is jobs and opportunity. More than disease, more than natural disasters, more than any of those things that you read in headlines, it's opportunities and jobs for millennials. Yet CEOs, they're waiting for us. And unfortunately, despite this situation of so much opportunity but just a disconnect, we still have these ridiculous headlines. How do these headlines exist? It's our responsibility as young people to go and approach things in an unconventional way so that we can change these headlines and show them that we are the generation that we are and that we are able to go and shape the future. And that's where we have to re-envision how we go about and continue to have the aspirations and the beliefs and the passions that we have, but we've got to change our way. And the first way is to say goodbye to the resume. If you think about many years ago, a couple decades ago, there was a few dozens of jobs that actually existed. And as I mentioned earlier, in the next 20 years, 80% of jobs don't exist today. Jobs that exist today didn't exist yesterday. So how would a resume, how would a piece of paper truly show the skill sets that this generation has in a way that could actually unlock a job? It's impossible. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, I was sitting down with a student. She was in the top of her class at one of the biggest business schools in Canada. And she wanted to become an accountant. Not a job that's out of the ordinary, a job that's existed for many decades. This student needed to work 30 hours a week to be able to pay for her school. A hard worker, yet she was still in the top 10% of her class. But because she had to work so hard, she was doing a number of retail jobs, and her resume, when she put it into the job banks to try to get that job, she didn't get a single call back. One of the top business schools, one of the tops of her class, and not even a call for an interview. And so she went out and started going for coffees. And as she was going for coffees with a number of these leaders, suddenly she got put in touch with one of the partners at an accounting firm, and now she was well on her way to a full-time offer. It was over a coffee without a resume, because that resume classified her as a retail employee and not as a top accounting prospect. This is the type of student that these accounting firms fight over, and a resume just did not do her justice. And we've got to flip mentorship upside down. So often, mentorship is looked at in ways where you fill out a survey and you kind of get stuck with somebody and you hope that it turns into a great relationship. Mentorship is something that cannot be created by anybody. It can be only created over time through a mutually beneficial relationship. As young people, if we want to go and find mentors, we have to find ways to go and connect our ideas and make it a mutually beneficial relationship. So as of today, we look at a funnel of mentorship. Mentorship's at the top. We fill out surveys, we get matched with people, and we go for awkward conversations. We hope that that conversation turns into advice. We always ask for help. And then that advice might turn into a follow-up coffee chat. And then if we're lucky, at the bottom of the funnel, we may have a little bit of opportunity at the end. But what we've got to do is actually flip this right on its head, and we have to go out and have untraditional, just easy conversations with no strings attached. Just go and share ideas with leaders. Go and share the ideas of how they can change their industry and different disruptive technologies that we live and breathe every day, but they don't. And just go and have coffees with them. And from those coffees, you're going to start sharing advice and help them, and guess what? They're going to help you, and they're going to think about you every single day and how they can get you to your next step. And all of a sudden, as you start sharing this advice and you build trust and you build a relationship, you look back in hindsight, and that is mentorship. Mentorship is something that you look at in the rearview mirror after you've worked hard on a two-way relationship. It's not something that's synthetically created through a matchmaking process. And once you've done that at the bottom, you've got this beautiful, ripe opportunity. And the last thing is ego. And you know what? It's not our fault. It's not our fault that as millennials we come with ego, because we've grown up in a place where we're always told we can do whatever we want to do. We're told that we can dream big and that there's so much opportunity out there, and just keep polishing that resume and you're going to do it. And the challenge with an ego is that an ego is going to be what keeps us between what we are today and what we need to be to get to the right opportunity. So leave your ego at the door. Try to find opportunities that you may fail, that you may make some wrong decisions, and that you're ultimately, if you're going to take an unconventional approach, you're going to make some mistakes that are going to hurt your ego. So by letting go of that ego and not worrying about the validation of what the mainstream world makes you think you have to do, you're suddenly going to be able to discover this world of opportunity that you never knew existed. So what I want to leave with you today is one challenge, and that is to change the headlines that make the news every single day about our generation. We are going to be the biggest generation. We are going to occupy 75% of the jobs in a few years, and we're going to change the world, but what we have to do is approach this in an unconventional way. We've got to say goodbye to the resume and go and approach our skill sets in a new way. We've got to flip mentorship upside down by going in and talking to these leaders and finding ways to actually help them do what they do. And in return, then we can expect something back. And finally, is we've got to work hard together to be able to leave our egos at the door, to encourage our peers to go make mistakes, and ultimately be able to go and show the world what we're made of. So let's go and do this.